So when we started this Impala build, right from the start, we wanted to modify the bumpers. We were thinking the diffuser in the rear and an opening in the front somehow. We went through a lot of renderings and different things, and we just couldn't come up with something we really, not what I saw in the renderings. It's hard to depict the shiny texture of the bumpers. I wasn't really happy with it, so we just started building. And looking at the original bumpers, we were originally going to start cutting those up. And looking at them, they're so wavy from the factory. They just weren't a real nice stamping. And they're heavy, and I remembered from years ago the Z11 race cars. And they had a whole aluminum sheet metal front end. The bumpers were aluminum. I think they might have had a couple in 62, but I know 63 was the big year for the aluminum. So that just sparked my interest in it, and I thought, you know, why don't we just build them out of aluminum? That way we can, you know, the middle part can be nice and straight, and got to thinking about what material to use, and I opted to go with a 5052 090 thick aluminum. The 5052 is much stronger than 3003. 3003 is very easy to work with. You anneal it, it's nice and soft. That's what we usually use for body panels. But for these bumpers, I wanted something that would maintain its shape. I knew I could form it, but it's going to be a little harder. And it actually turned out perfect. That was a really good choice. Today we're going to build bumpers. Start on the rear bumper for the 62 Impala Super Sport convertible. We're going to be doing making some Pullmax dies, and to make this shape along the top and the bottom, and should keep it pretty consistent. And then we're going to go back in and we're going to cut a diffuser in the bottom according to our new renderings. So it's going to look pretty modern. And another reason why we're building the bumpers, I want to crisp up some of these edges and make them straight. Original bumpers were stamped, and they're just so heavy that they have some waves and all in them. So follow along and see how I put them together. So I already got kind of a head start this morning. I get up pretty early, so got in here and the shop was nice and cool. And I took a piece we had already kind of formed, and this was kind of a template. Wasn't completely happy with it, so I sheared these pieces out. We started out with 3 3/4 wide, and then I went to our big box and pan brake and formed these two angles. This one wound up being a 30 degree, and this one wound up being 70. So I'll form those up. That'll be that top lip. Now we're going to go modify some Pullmax dies, and we'll put this radius in, as you can see. All right, so we're going to get the Pullmax all set up to put that big radius in it. We just we took a set of dies we already had, and we modified them. This point's where we're doing the most bending, so we kind of moved our attachment point over on top of that, so that so they won't try to flex and move as much. So we'll get this thing all set up. Put our top in first. Make sure it goes all the way in and seats. May have to trim that one a little bit. The Pullmax is an interesting tool. This bottom is threaded so that it has fine adjustments to turn it and move it up. And then there's a collet inside of here it's like sliced, and it's multiple pieces, and as you tighten this down, it's cone shape, and it sucks it all in and tightens up on that square shank. And we have the same thing on the top. The top's just, it has a seat in the top, so you always want to make sure this top is seated all the way against that. There's no dirt and stuff in the way, because it can get all jammed up if not. And then there's also a depth adjustment too on your bottom die. It's over here on this side. On the left-hand side, there's a cone inside there, and that pushes against this little tapered piece. So we get a fine adjustment too on the in and out this way. And then this one it locks it down this way. And it's also kind of cone shaped on the end, so it locks it back tight, but won't let it move. Pretty neat how the machines are set up. Well, that's kind of what we're looking for. I gotta figure out how to get that to that. I'll just start running them through right along that corner to there. Can't quite do it. I think I need to turn that edge a little bit. What do you think? That might do it. Oh yeah. Need something welded on here to have a stop. Yeah, so I think we're gonna make a stop here to help hold it there where I want it. That way I can run it through, and because it looks like we want the corner of the die, it's working out perfectly where we had it to run in that groove. And then as I keep coming down more and more, it'll just keep rolling this to the shape we want. And finally, when it's done, it'll bend it either direction. It'll bend it to get it the exact shape we want. So I think I'm gonna weld a stop on that bottom, and that'll hold it and keep it pushed into the bend. So let's go do that. So it looks like I got a little bit of curve there, and then this, and then more curve this way here, and our straight line there. So if I take from that edge to what I feel like is center, right there, pretty close to 5. Let's make it 5 inches, and we'll make our flange there at 3/4. So the next portion, now we got the top part figured out, and work on this bottom piece. So we're gonna make it we're gonna have a weld seam here to meet the two. So we'll start from here, and we'll go all the way to this bottom edge. So I'm gonna wrap my tape around there. So if we sheared a piece 7.5 inches, I think that'll work. And then we'll put this bend in it and make a hard bend here. And then we may put this one in the box and pan brake where we have the radius die that we use for gas tanks and such. So that'll put that radius in, and then we can come back and put this gradual curve in it in the Pullmax with some dies for that. So yeah, let's get started on that part. So a little tip for guys that if you have a back gauge on a shear, one thing you always want to do is you want to back it up and then bring it back to the number you want. That takes up all your slack. It's just like machining a piece of steel in a mill. You want to always take up the backlash in your lead screw. Otherwise, when you go and slide your material in there and it hits that backstop, it'll move according to how much slop you have in your lead screws. So I'm going to 7.5 inches. So I backed it up, and then I brought it back to where I wanted. So I'm at 7.5 inches. And it doesn't like this 090, does it?
I don't know. I've never cut 090 in here. Go ahead. Yeah,
all right.
Hit it again.
I got to do it this morning, but I had to do it a couple times. I mean, it does all right, but not ideal. But so on the bottom of the bumper, we're going to have a 3/4 inch lip. So years ago, I got these quick Scribes from SoCal Speed Shop, and I think Roaster Supply also has them. But we're going to use the 3/4 deal. These are made out of stainless, and they just give you a nice little scribe line according to where your edge is. So we can literally just scribe it. So that gives me a 3/4 inch line to make my brake to. Very simple. Let's go figure out how we're gonna make it. A lot of times we have to take this angle off to make certain bends. So, but it helps pull the material around without, it's easier on the brake. We have this angle on the front, so I'm gonna put it back on. I've been watching the Perkins brothers building the houses, so they're really good about doing quick tips and stuff during the day, just when they find stuff. Well, so this is what I intentionally, my first intentions were of having the YouTube channel.
Let's just share all the tips.
Yes. Because I feel like I know so much about stuff that I've built and using the tools, and nobody else out there does that. I have guys and they're like learning to do it, but it's never somebody that's a pro that's sitting there, you know, that's been doing it for a long time. When I worked in, well, I was even watching my dad when I was in my teens, or the people in my dad's shop. And then I worked for Lawrenceburg Ornamental Iron Works. And Carl Hewitt just put me in a position where I was the project manager. I was 22 years old. So I learned how to run every piece of equipment in there. We got on shutdowns. I had to learn in the middle of the night a lot of times. One of the best ways to learn. Maybe we'll turn it around this way. So I know it's 5 inches in. In the center of that radius on top, let's see, it is the center of it, I'm about 3 7/8. So if I put my line into the center of it, I should be 1 1/8 off of that angle. So if I just measure 1 1/8 on both ends, then I know I'm at the center of the die with my mark. All right. Now we need to figure out an angle. Bought this years ago. It's for making miter cuts, made by Starrett. So I'm gonna get an approximation of the angle I want. I think it's about right there. So we're at 70 degrees. We're gonna go up 20 on our brake. Let's make a bend. So something I do when we're gonna make a bend, I want to be consistent with it. Try to get the machine all set up so that everything is tight end to end the same. And then on the front of the apron, I'll set an angle finder. So I want to wind up going 20 degrees up. So, but to do that, you have to go past. So I will go, see, we're already at 70. But when I release it, it actually flexes back. So what I do is I bring my apron up to there. Now we're at 82. So we only went 8 degrees, even though we went to 30 on the brake. So if that's the case, I'm going to go to, let's go all the way to 60 and see where we are. So I'm at 60 on the angle finder. Now if I come up and touch it, I'm at 73. So I need to go 3 more degrees. So I need to go to like 57 when I bend it. So right there I went to 57, and if I come up and touch it, I'm at around 69. Yeah, I'm pretty close. Now I'll remember that number. I'll go to 57 degrees every time with my bend, and that's my bend allowance of spring back. Yeah, there's our bend. Look at how consistent that is. All right, so Garrett made us this piece on the back as a stop. Just quick and dirty. Now I'll be able to run through without any problems. That worked better. I think we need some WD-40. Made it a little bit of banana. Oh yeah, get straight now. The center sections of the bumper actually turned out just super straight. We bent them in the handbrake, and that worked really well. Of course, we got to the ends, and there's a lot of shaping, and to do that, we just did it in multiple pieces and welded it together. I know it was driving Brandon nuts trying to make all those individual pieces. I did the front, he did the rear, but with a little practice, and we tried it a few times, and the shapes really came out. So structurally, we totally changed how they bolt up and everything. So basically along the top, we made an inner piece that's bent. And so in the front and in the back, that helps keep everything nice and straight to the car. And there's multiple bolts. In fact, I think we used 1/4 inch on the front and the back. So they're about every 6 inches all the way across, and it bolts up tight. And then we went in on the inside, and we welded everything on the inside as well as on the outside. So we try and eliminate cracks down the road. I know the bumper's going to be moving quite a bit, and they're not heavy at all. They only weigh a few pounds, but we don't want them to crack down the road. So we went in and welded the inside as well. The nice thing about it, using the 090 thick, it just sanded out nice. So we would start with 80 grit and work our way up. Actually, we started out with filing first. So most of the welds we filed and could actually file them until they were super straight. And then we started with 80 grit and worked our way up through the grits till we get to the polished. And that worked out really well. Hi, girl. Did you help out, huh? Yeah, you wanted to help out, didn't you? You'd probably eat the bumpers. Sit. Good girl. Yeah. I gotta give her some loving or she'll worry me to death. Come on, inside. Go. Go on, inside. And then polishing, we used, was it Renegade, their wheels and Rouge, and they polished right up. I did some of it with on the pedestal grinder, and then as much as I could. I mean, they're super light and easy to hold. And then the final part I did with a big 7-inch grinder and buffed them. But we opted to do that, to polish them instead of chroming them. One, because the chroming would take too long. We didn't have that much time. And also, all the trim on this car, for the most part, all the side trim is all original, and we dipped those in a sodium hydroxide solution, and that stripped the original anodizing off, and then we came back and buffed that, and it has that kind of milky white luster of aluminum. and it goes really well with this paint color. So I decided that, hey, I want to do that on the bumpers, and that just worked out extremely well. So my original plan with the building bumpers kind of came from the thought of my past when I worked on a 1952 Vignale Ferrari when I was back in Virginia. And that was one of my first big metalworking things. I made the grill, I helped make all the trim pieces around the bumpers, made interior trim, like the wing nut for the spare tire. It wound up, the car sold for $2.5 million. It's just all original 1952 Vignale Ferrari, unreal car, completely hand built from aluminum. But the bumpers were made out of steel, and of course they were hand built. This car was the first of 6, so it was very unique. And Craig Naff, who is a huge idol of mine, he built Cadzilla, and he used to work for Boyd. And I got to know him. He lived in Woodstock, Virginia, and he had worked, kind of made the bumpers, and then they came to us, and I fashioned them to the car, and then made this little bead trim that went around those things. So I always had that in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, you can just make bumpers if you really want to. And those were pretty elaborate. So these are actually probably more simple than what those Ferrari bumpers were, because they don't have all the curves. And so that's really what brought me to the idea of actually just making bumpers. And I knew they would fit the car better and accomplish what we wanted, and we could make them nice and flat. So that's the route we went. There are a couple things that if I had to do these again, we may do different. One problem I had, we have some places actually have some contamination in it. And when we were doing the final polish, then they kind of came out, and they're really hard to get rid of. It could have been from like sticking our tungsten or just not quite cleaning it good enough when we welded it. I guess otherwise, I don't know if there's too many pitfalls we had. I'm really happy with the design. I wish we could figure out how to render them and make it where it's easier to come up with that in the beginning. But that's in the polishing part actually took a really long time. The finish part to work up through all the different grits and then do the final polish. And we still have some milkiness in places. When we were at SEMA, we actually had the guys from Others come over, and they showed us some things and using a latex glove and polishing it with your hand with the latex glove actually works really well. It works better than a cloth. That was something we learned along the way. And polishing out the welds, I was actually really surprised that they don't show as much as I thought they would. I'm sure they probably will if it sits for a while, but we're thinking about maybe ceramic coating or something on these so that they won't tarnish as fast. But that's kind of the only pitfalls we ran into. That and then just it wasn't that easy to shape the 090. But yeah, that's it.
All right, so I kind of took over where Paul left off. He formed up some really nice centers for me that matched the fronts. Did that on the box and pan brake. Basically, I took the 2 sections and I fit them to the back angle of the car, welded up the seam in the center. I did make a mount that goes under to the bottom structure of the car. And then I came over here in the corners, and essentially where I started is I made a whole outer frame for it. So I made this top piece come up and over and all the way down to about here. And then I just kind of started filling in the pieces. I definitely kind of struggled a little bit. It was out of what I'm used to doing. It was my first time shaping any 090 aluminum to this extent, aside from like just some simple box and pan stuff. So with these corners, I basically felt that the easiest way to do it was to do it in a bunch of different sections. So there's actually probably about 4 or 5 sections in here. And basically what I did was I took a flat sheet of 090 and I annealed it. And then once it was annealed, it just allowed me to shape it a lot easier. And these inner pieces in here, I did a lot of like sandbag work and kind of hammered and created those crowns and got it close, got them to where the general shape was where we needed it to be, got them fit, welded in, and then we went back and kind of fine-tuned all of that afterwards. I didn't worry too much about making those pieces perfect. It was more of get the general shape, get them in there, get them welded in, and then we would adjust from there. So that's pretty much what we did there. Once we had the whole bumper together and kind of finished out, I went ahead and cut out our center section for the diffuser. And basically all the diffuser is some 090 aluminum that tucks up underneath here. We've got some mounts on the bottom side. I step the flange, that way it's nice and flush, and then it comes back, kicks down at an angle, and then sits under the tank for about 1.5 inches. We went ahead and hemmed that edge so it looks nice and finished under there. Added 2 mounts, one on each side of the tank, just to make sure that it's nice and solid and doesn't rattle around or anything like that. And then our fins down here on the diffuser are some 3/8 aluminum that I cut to the shape, and then we matched this front shape on all of them to the back of the bumper, and then just set them back about 1 inch. The way that made most sense to attach them, we didn't want to weld seam in there. We didn't want to have to finish out any of the welds, so I actually had Matt machine holes and tap them. So each one of these has 3 different mounting holes through that diffuser, and they are just screwed on like that. And then our center section here, I took these 2 centered diffuser fins and I bent up a box basically to connect them together and welded those internally, and then added some riv nuts to mount our plate. And then after we had all that shape in here, we had Jake come in and shape some custom tips to match the diffuser and the bumper. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention that I think is super cool and cleans up the back of the car a lot is we've actually reshaped this entire corner. So if you're familiar with 62 Impalas, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, and you probably already noticed it before. But essentially the factory bumper would come out and around kind of like in this shape, and it would hug the outside of the car, and to be honest, they fit really poorly, and I think they looked real clunky and just were real big. So Phil came in here and reshaped this corner. Basically we just took and made a point out of it and made it look like it flows with the back of the car. So he made a panel in there. Everything's flanged and tied into the inner structure. Basically the same way it would be from the factory, just a whole lot cleaner. And then when I shaped the bumper, I went ahead and matched up to that. So we got a nice body line in here, and everything kind of ties in, flows with the body lines. And then another thing we did with these outer trim pieces is because we've tucked the bumper so tight to the car, we've actually cut the bottom of these trim pieces and folded them over. So on an original car, they would kind of hang down below the bumper because the bumper sat so far off the car, and we wanted everything nice and tucked, so we went ahead and did that as well. Yeah, it's just a couple little things to clean it up, make it look a whole lot better. So while we're on the topic of bumpers, I'll take you up front here and we'll kind of talk about this front one just a little bit. All right, so on this front bumper, we definitely wanted to keep it pretty stock looking. So Paul went ahead and shaped everything, shaped the corners, got everything together, and then I came in and just did basically the cleanup work. I did a bunch of filing and sanding and just all that good stuff. And then we wanted some airflow in here for the intercoolers. So we went ahead and cut out some holes in here, added some flanges to it. I just shaped those out of 2 pieces and then welded the seams up, and then did all the file work there as well. It's essentially the same shape as a stock bumper, just with a little bit crisper lines and tucked up, fits a lot better. We did bob the front fenders on the sides and tucked the bumper up underneath there and mounted through there, so everything's just tighter and sleeker and gives it a much better look in my opinion.